Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Today, I will be interviewing Florida House District 101, Florida Representative Hillary Cassel. So let me add her to our list, add her to the live, and we will get going. I know it stormed big time here in Florida. Right. I have invited her, so we are going to go ahead and get started whenever she can join. If you have questions, you can post them in the comment. Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Representative Cassel, you look amazing today.
Oh, thanks. As do you.
So nice to see you.
You too.
All right, so I'm just going to have you introduce yourself because you're the best at doing that.
Well, thanks. So sure. So I am State Representative Hillary Cassel. I have the honor and privilege of representing District 1.
Oh, we're going to get you back on. I'm telling you, we've got power problems because of the storm. You're back, but I can't hear you. You want me to close it out and we'll redo?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. You're off again.
Thanks for that.
There you are. Yep.
It never stops ringing. I'm sure you know that.
Yep.
So basically, I represent District 101, 5 different cities in Broward County, including Fort Lauderdale, Dania Beach, Davie, Hollywood, and Hallandale. I am an attorney by trade. I've been practicing law for 20 years. I am a mom to a beautiful little 10-year-old boy, and I specialize in property insurance, and that was really what prompted me to originally run for office. But I'm a third-generation native Floridian, grew up in Wellington, Florida, went to Florida colleges, and moved to Broward County to go to law school, and I've been here ever since.
And so you're running for your third term. Is that right?
Yep. Yes.
Cannot believe that. Okay.
Me neither. Time flies.
Yeah. Last session for you was amazing. You passed a lot of the bills that you initiated, and I apologize if I used the wrong language, but you initiated them or you wrote them actually were passed. And I feel like people don't understand how many bills different representatives bring that never go anywhere, but yours actually passed. So let's highlight a few of those.
Sure. So in the House, we actually are limited to only filing 7 bills. There's 120 of us. So imagine if we, like the Senate, had an unlimited number of bills that we could be filed. It would just be overwhelming for our staff. So we are limited in the amount of bills that we are filed, but I filed 7 bills this legislative session. And while they passed, they maybe ended up in a larger package. So for example, I passed a bill this year that's really going to help small micro schools be able to open up without a lot of the red tape that we see. So we know as a result of COVID, there's so many empty spaces in our commercial and mixed use space that are just dying for people to get in. Well, I passed some legislation that will allow schools that are 150 students or less, they still have to comply with fire marshals, they still have to comply with the requirements that are necessary to open up a school, but they're going to have a little bit less red tape. And when you think about what a micro school can provide for the community, you know, we have situations, we have students with disabilities, we have students who just need smaller learning environments, we have parents who want their children to be in a Montessori or in a religious school or in a STEM-based school. And this is going to allow those micro schools to open so parents have more choice and freedom in the type of schools that their children have access to. I passed a piece of legislation, and that made it to the governor's desk and has been signed into law. I passed a piece of legislation which didn't make it to the governor's desk, but I think it's something for moving forward that we really need to focus on. It's AI. As I mentioned earlier, I am a property insurance expert. Insurance is my area of expertise. And we know that we have an issue when it comes to insurance companies denying claims based solely on the use of AI. And what's happening is there are several class actions across the country where there are error rates of 90%. as high as 90% when utilizing AI to deny claims. So it was a very consumer friendly bill that made sure that there were just consumer protections in place that still allowed insurance companies to utilize AI. That's going to help lower the cost, but making sure that there's a human that remains in the loop. I also passed legislation this year. Mental health is a huge priority for me. It was actually piggybacking off of legislation that I passed last year. So obviously, being residents of Broward County, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, the tragedy there hit us very differently than it did others. And we have spent a significant amount of money in the state of Florida since that tragedy to make sure our students have access to mental health care in our schools. We've spent almost $1 billion, but nobody's actually tracking the data. We have
Mm,
no idea if our students are actually getting better. So 2 years ago, I filed legislation that was signed into law that's actually going to give us access to the data to make sure the funds we're using are helping our students. And if not, making sure that we're using those funds in the best way to make sure our students are getting better. And this year, we looked at that same with our court system, our community court system, our drug use, our veterans court, to make sure that our mental health and drug use courts are actually, we're spending a ton of taxpayer dollars, and we want these people to get better so they can get back on their feet and contribute to society. So we also passed that legislation this year. And I know I passed some others.
yeah, right. Okay, that is wild, right? To think that $1 billion was being spent and no one's checking to see like the result. It's just here's $1 billion.
Yeah, and obviously, right, the intent behind it is the right thing to do. We want
Yep,
to make sure our students have access to mental health care and counselors in their schools, but we also want to make sure that, again, it's working. You know, as somebody who was diagnosed with bipolar 2 at the age of 30, I understand that system better than most, and I understand how important it is to have access to the right care so you can become a contributing, successful member of society. So for me, it's making sure that we're getting these kids into the right hands. We'll spend as much money as we need to. This isn't a
yep,
conversation about not spending money in this space. It's making sure that the money we're spending is actually getting the return, because the return is our children's lives, and that's priceless.
yep. And then the AI bill. So you're saying people would file a claim because of a flood or whatever it was, and so the computer would just say it didn't, whatever, it didn't meet some requirement, and then it was denied completely.
Yeah, so really what brought my attention to this is really in the healthcare space, because that's really where time matters, right? And time is of the essence. And if you get an automatic denial from an insurance company, from a robot, from a computer, you then are denied. Maybe it's a referral to another physician, or it's a surgery that you need, or a prescription that you need. So we're talking about people's health and their life, their ability to get better. And that
Mm,
needs to be done in a quick manner, but with a result that's actually reflective of what they've paid for when it comes to their insurance policy. So the idea came to me actually after the murder of the United Healthcare CEO. As I was researching it, the thought process was that maybe there was some motive, and obviously not a justifiable motive, but there was some conversations about this gentleman, the alleged killer, having denied healthcare claims, and AI kind of took over that conversation. And that's when I realized, wow, we've got a real problem specifically in the healthcare space. My bill did apply across all lines of insurance company because it matters everywhere. But the focus behind that bill is making sure that when you submit a claim to a health insurance company, someone's looking at it if they're going to deny it or partially deny it or underpay it. It's just a great consumer protection that we really need to make sure that somebody is actually reviewing the claim and making a decision, and not a robot.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so property insurance, and then going into this session and property taxes, what are your thoughts? What what goals do you have? How do
Girl,
you?
I don't know how much time you have because my thoughts on property insurance, we've had these conversations.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a property insurance expert. I've spent 17 years of a legal career solely focusing on that particular area. I've represented every insurance company in the world, but I've had the honor and privilege of representing policyholders all across the state for over a decade now. And I always like to say I took my fight from the courtroom to the Capitol because I had a better understanding of one, how consumers are treated by not all insurance companies, but by insurance companies, generally speaking, in a courtroom when they have a claim, right? It's the most stressful time in their life. Think after a hurricane, you just want your house fixed and now you're fighting an insurance company. So I
Yeah.
took my fight before I ever even ran for office. I founded a consumer advocacy group and was engaged in the legislative process, doing the work before I ever had the privilege of having the title of state representative, making sure that we had balance in our marketplace, that consumers had access to the courts, that they had the protections and the tools that they needed to be able to hold the bad insurance companies accountable, but making sure insurance companies are able to be, affordable, available, and reliable, and for them to be able to make a profit. So I have filed over 14 insurance related bills in my 4 years in the legislature. I have a significant bill that really is very forward thinking and wasn't really ready for prime time. So I'm very fortunate that my Speaker Perez, allowed me to utilize that piece of legislation and turn it into a study. So currently, Florida State University is studying my a universal windstorm bill for citizens, which would really bring citizens back to what it was always meant to be when it was first initiated as a joint underwriting association. That's one of the biggest problems we have right now with citizens. But really, the next phase that we need to move into is dealing with the Hurricane Catastrophe Fund, what we call the CAT Fund. I have filed that legislation 2 out of my last 4 years. But what people don't realize when it comes to property insurance, the real cost driver is something we call reinsurance. That's insurance for insurance companies, right? Insurance companies want to make sure they're covered.
Mm-hmm.
But that cost is 40 to 50% of what you pay in your premium. So when you think of, like, for example, like California wildfire, and you say to yourself, that doesn't impact me, you're wrong. California wildfires and all other natural disasters that take place not only just in the United States, but globally have an actual impact on the cost of insurance here in the state of Florida. And reinsurance is a global international market that we don't regulate in Florida or in the United States, so we can't control prices. So really getting a handle on the domestic component of our catastrophe fund and helping with that, which will immediately lower the cost of insurance, because that is the only thing statutorily speaking that we have told insurance companies, hey, if you save money on the cost of reinsurance, that has to go back to the consumer. If they save money on marketing, if they save money on the stadiums that they put their names in,
Yeah.
they don't have to turn that savings over to consumers. But if they do save it on their cost of reinsurance, that gets passed down. So if we can lower that cost here in the state of Florida, not relying on Bermuda and Switzerland and London, lower that cost here, it's an immediate savings back to Floridians. So that's my focus. I filed that legislation this year. I believe Congressman Donalds is going to be our next governor, and I am fortunate enough to have had multiple conversations with him about that idea. He has stated publicly that he's also in agreement that that's the next step that we need to get to really lower cost for consumers.
Is there an education component for you to the other representatives? Because I understand what you said just now, but
It's a lot.
it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you also having to educate other people, other representatives, you know?
So that's why I decided to run for office. For 3 years, I was engaged in the legislative process just as an advocate, as somebody who understands a very, very, very complicated subject. It's the number one issue that impacts Floridians. Let's be honest. Hurricanes don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. When your property insurance sends you your bill, they don't look at your political affiliation and decide what they're going to charge you. It impacts us all across the board. And so when I was engaged in the process as an advocate and now understanding it from this side, but I would get 15 minutes with a member of the legislature, and you would try to explain to them what I just explained to you. And and I didn't even get into the nuances of it, right? Like that's
Right.
just kind of like this is the, 5 minute shortcut story, so to speak. But you would get 15 minutes with them, and I started to realize this is an impact. We've been in some form of a hurricane crisis since 1992, and there's even some data out there that says it predates that.
Mm-hmm.
But we've really been in some type of property insurance crisis since 1992 in some form or another. Maybe the characters have changed or the issues have changed, but it's just this hamster wheel that we've been on, and we really need to start being more forward thinking so we don't fall into the same situation again. And so I started to realize that you talk insurance and a lot of people's eyes glaze over.
Right.
I'm sure there are people right now that are so bored. I hope not. But,
Right.
so I started to realize, listen, you need a voice. And I came in that as my area of expertise, and I get a lot of education from my colleagues on areas that aren't mine. I have no experience in the education space. So I really look to my colleagues who have spent years of a professional life in that space to help me better understand the policy that I'm reviewing. But yeah, there is a lot of education for those individuals that are interested in diving deep. I was honored to be the vice chair of the Insurance and Banking Committee these past 2 years, which we did some incredible work. But yeah, it is an education, and it's a constant education, whether it be this issue or the many other issues that you deal with as a state representative. But yeah, there's a lot of educating and explaining, and thankfully my colleagues, for the most part, are very open to listening to me, because I don't think there's a member of the House or the Senate. They would all say, if asked who is the expert in the legislature on property insurance, there isn't a single person that says me unless they just don't like me.
Yeah. Well, and kind of like what you just said, I mean, getting your bills passed and all of that, doesn't that speak to the relationships that you built there and how important that is? Like, so that when you go in, I mean, you have influence, you've proven yourself to be knowledgeable and, common sense driven, all of those things. So when you go into the session this third time, like, does that give you some type of, not like superiority, but like, what's the word? Like,
A leg up, so to speak.
yeah, like we're listening to her. Like she knows what's going on.
Yeah, relationships, all of that matters. I think the reality is I also work very, very, very hard. And I pick legislation that I think is necessary, right? So last year I filed legislation dealing with our health insurance, right? Pre-authorizations, claims handling, down coding when it comes to insurance companies and denials. The bill, I didn't think, ended up being like 80 pages long. But what was really important about that is we haven't touched that area in Florida in 25 years. So there is still statutes dealing with how we as consumers are dealt with by health insurance companies, and it talks about facsimiles. There's no conversations in these statutes about like electronic data, which we know all, physicians and providers use. So it's something about like just being able to dig in, and being able to understand complicated issues. I think 20 years of being a lawyer and understanding the practical application of the law, because I've done it in the court system for 20 years. I also can understand when I read policy, what's good, what's bad, what's missing, where are the unintended consequences. So a lot of my colleagues come to me if they're filing sophisticated legislation. They want my suggestions. They want my input, and I think I've earned the reputation that I file smart legislation. I file legislation that's needed, and I work extremely hard. So there's a representative who debated in support of one of my bills a few years ago, and his debate really just centered on my work ethic, and that if you want to get a bill passed, go speak with Representative Cassel, because I work my bills extremely hard, and that has earned me the reputation of, one, I'm going to nag you.
Mhm.
I can be pretty persuasive and pretty annoying when I have my mindset on something, but I'm going to know that bill better than anybody. I'm going to be able to provide you the data, the whys of why it's
Mm.
necessary. And I think as a result of that, it results in me being able to pass really impactful legislation, not only for Broward County, which I've passed legislation specifically that impacts Broward County and cities here and all across the state.
Okay, so we're starting to wrap up. Thinking about this next session, what are you going into it with? What are your biggest goals?
Listen, I think right now for me it's reelection, which is coming up in November. So that's kind of my focus. But I'm always going to do property insurance related issues. Obviously, my cat fund legislation I think is an absolute priority for me. Another big bill for Broward County is allowing our two safety net hospital systems to collaborate with one another. It is legislation that is absolutely necessary. When these two hospital systems were formed, over 50 years ago, Broward County looked very different. And to be able to allow these systems to collaborate, because when you are able to collaborate, you can save money on HR and IT and all the things that are extremely expensive. And when you're a safety net hospital, you're already operating at a loss. You really want to be able to provide services. So how can we save the hospital money to be able to provide more resources and better care to the people of Broward County, and these are the people that need it the most. So that will definitely be priority legislation for me. Again, it'll be the third year that I filed it. Don't let the newspaper fool you. It wasn't filed in the dead of night with no knowledge. It had been filed the year before, but sometimes you can't always believe what you read. So that'll definitely be another priority for me. But anything insurance related, at the end of the day, that really is what impacts. That is one of the biggest cost drivers families have. And who better to keep this seat and continue to work hard for Broward County and all Floridians, but the number one insurance expert in the state of Florida.
Yes. You know what I want to say about you, because I know you have a young son, but I am very passionate about Arc Broward and helping those with disabilities. And when I asked you to come visit, you cleared your calendar immediately and you were there within, days, I believe. And so I just think that speaks to your constituents. And when they ask you to pay attention to something, you knew a lot that day. I toured with you and you knew the concerns and what they were dealing with. And I just think that speaks to your connection with us and willingness to make time and learn about an issue or be involved. So I like that. I think it's really good.
Thank you. Listen, to me, one of the most important jobs I have. I think I have two important jobs. It's constituent services, which I'm so fortunate to have the most incredible staff. My district aide, Connie, who runs my district office for me, and making sure that people who have needs and need our help know where to find us and know that they can call us, and be out there and better understand what the needs of the community are. So if you call and you need me to come visit somewhere, I'm going to come, and then we're going to think about how we can solve some of the problems that you're facing, because I do believe that's my job as a lawyer. It is literally my job to solve people's problems, and I've taken that with me to my job as the state representative for District 101. I also think my number two job is to bring home money to my district. And this past year, I brought home $41 million, and the year before that, I brought home about $48 million. In total, in my 4 years, I brought home $104 million to Broward County, and I'm very, very proud of that. That is an unheard of number. So I feel very grateful to have been able to do that, because there's a lot of organizations that need that funding, and to be able to be their voice in Tallahassee and bring that money home is extremely important to me.
Yes. No, it's incredible. Thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're doing for us, for serving us and, trying to be better, learn more and grow all the time and help us. I appreciate it. We need you.
Thank
So,
you.
and I know you'll have events as we get closer to the election, so I'll make sure to share those with all of the people.
Please, and if you're watching, follow me, reach out. If you have questions, you want to meet me, I love to do that kind of stuff, as you know, Natalie. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have the best day.
Bye, you too.
Bye.